Hey guys, tonight we journey to Japan's northern islands, to when snow falls deep and nights are long, for the soothing recitation of Ainu Yukar, their oral epics. Imagine you're in a traditional Ainu sisei, the central hearth warm, light from a flickering fish oil lamp. Outside, wind howls. Inside, an elder weaves tales of gods, heroes, and talking animals, a tradition passed down for generations. This isn't about flashy effects, it's the power of voice, ancient stories, and communal peace from shared listening. And let's be honest, sitting for a multi-hour epic in a smoky hut after a long day, you probably won't survive this imaginary journey without your legs falling asleep or craving non-mythological snacks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to see our global night owl community. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The last vestiges of the pale, subarctic daylight have long since surrendered to the deep, velvety darkness of a northern night. Outside your Ainu home, your sais, the wind, a raw, biting entity carrying the scent of pine and distant snowfields, might be engaged in a mournful, a howling song through the dense forest that surrounds your small village, your kotan, but inside, a profound and comforting calm begins to settle, a gentle rhythm ushered in by the flickering warmth of the central hearth and the soft glow of a carefully tended fish oil lamp. The day is practical, often arduous. Toils, perhaps hunting in the deep snows, fishing through river ice, gathering firewood, or meticulously crafting tools and garments, are now complete. The day's main excitement, which, let's be perfectly honest, probably involved a thrilling, near-silent debate with a particularly stubborn salmon about its willingness to join you for dinner, or perhaps a deep, philosophical discussion with a venerable fir tree from which you were respectfully harvesting some bark for medicinal purposes, is well and truly over. Now is the time for a different kind of sustenance, a nourishment for the spirit, as your family, your small community, gathers by the hearth, enveloped in an evening calm that feels as ancient and as soothing as the land itself. You settle onto your favorite rush mat, or perhaps a warm bearskin, laid upon the slightly raised earthen platform that runs along the inner walls of the saisi. It's the one that's only slightly lumpy in that one particular spot, and doesn't smell too strongly of last week's exceptionally well-smoked herring. Luxury, Ainu style. The traditional Ainu dwelling, called a sizi or chisei, was typically a sturdy, rectangular, single-room structure. Its framework ingeniously built with timber poles, often from chestnut or fir, and then thickly thatched with materials like reed, miscanthus grass, or like layers of bark, all designed to provide essential insulation and withstand the harsh, snowy winters and cool, damp summers of your northern homeland. Ainu Mosir. The interior is a single, spacious room, dominated by the central sunken hearth, the apoi, which is the true heart of the home. Above it, a gap in the thatched roof, or perhaps a more structured smoke hole, allows the fragrant wood smoke to escape, though enough always lingers to create a hazy, almost sacred atmosphere. The lighting in the sais this evening is what you'd affectionately call intensely moody and conducive to imaginative shadow puppetry. One or two small lamps, perhaps carved from stone or fashioned from a large shell, their wicks of twisted plant fiber sputtering gently in a pool of rendered fish or seal oil, cast a warm, flickering, golden glow. It's not exactly stadium floodlighting, you'll grant, but it's perfect for illuminating the faces of your loved ones gathered nearby, for making everyone look just a little more mysterious and wise, and for conveniently obscuring precisely how much accumulated dust and miscellaneous ancestral clutter might be residing on those intricately carved ancestral treasures and sacred inner ritual prayer sticks that occupy the revered eastern corner, near the Kamui Puyar, the sacred window through which the gods, The kamui are believed to enter and depart. As the evening calm deepens, you might hear the quirky, comforting sound of the sais itself settling around you. When a particularly strong gust of wind sighs through the dense thatch of the roof, the dried reeds sometimes rub together in a way that sounds almost like a soft, collective whispering or a gentle, breathy song. Your grandmother always said it was the Sisakor Kamui, the guardian spirit of the house, just making sure everyone was comfortable and content before the night's stories began. It's a small, familiar sound that adds to the feeling of security and belonging. Historians and archaeologists who study Ainu culture still engage in considerable discussion and debate regarding the exact antiquity and specific regional variations of certain Ainu architectural features found in the traditional sais, and the extent to which these unique designs might have been influenced by much earlier Jomon period pit-dwelling predecessors, later Okhotsk culture interactions from the north, or if they represent purely indigenous Ainu adaptations developed over millennia in response to the specific environmental challenges and available resources of their northern island territories. Looking at the ingenious way the massive roof beams interlock, a testament to generations of building wisdom, you feel a deep connection to those who built this home, and the countless homes like it that came before. The practical tasks are done. The fish are hung to smoke, the tools are cleaned and put away. The children, after a final, boisterous flurry of pre-sleep energy, are now beginning to quiet down, their eyes wide with anticipation for what the evening might bring. A sense of readiness settles over your small group. You draw your woven cloak a little tighter around your shoulders, not so much from cold, the hearth provides a generous warmth, but from a comforting sense of enclosure, of being part of this intimate circle. The air is thick with the scent of burning birch or oak from the fire. The lingering aroma of the evening meal, perhaps a savory stew of salmon and wild vegetables, and the subtle, clean fragrance of the pine and reed that form the very structure of your home. This is the moment, this deep, shared quiet, when the world outside, with its howling winds and its deep snows, recedes, and the inner world of the sais filled with warmth, kinship, and the promise of ancient words comes fully alive. You are settled, you are calm, and you are ready to listen. The lamplight flickers, casting long, dancing shadows, and the stage is set for the soothing recitation to begin. The gentle flickering light of the fish oil lamp casts warm, dancing shadows upon the reed-thatched inner walls of your sais, your Ainu home. The central hearth, the apoi, radiates a comforting warmth, its embers glowing like sleepy, watchful eyes. The wind outside may still be whispering its mournful secrets through the towering pines and firs of Ainu Mosir, your ancestral land. But within these bark-clad walls, a profound and anticipatory calm has settled. The day's necessities are met, bellies are content, and now a different kind of nourishment is sought. A nourishment for the spirit, the imagination, and the collective memory of your people. All eyes, young and old, turn expectantly towards one particular figure, the one who will soon unspool the ancient, sacred threads of the Yukar. It is often an elder, perhaps your grandmother, your grandfather, or a respected aunt or uncle, who assumes the role of the Yukarkur, the skilled reciter of these oral epics. Yukar were traditionally recited from memory by highly skilled male or female elders, known as Yukar Kur, literally Yukar person or epic teller, who often possessed vast repertoires of these lengthy poetic narratives and typically learned them not through formal schooling, but through many years of attentive listening, gradual absorption, and dedicated practice from a young age. Tonight, it might be Grandmother Ataru, her face a beautiful tapestry woven with the lines of countless seasons, her eyes holding a depth of wisdom that seems to encompass all the stories of your people. She settles into her accustomed place by the hearth, perhaps on a slightly more comfortable mat, a spot that has become, through unspoken tradition, the storyteller's perch. It's not a throne, not a stage, just a place of honor earned through her gift of voice and memory. The reverence is palpable. So is the comforting, familiar scent of smoked salmon and dried herbs that always seems to cling gently to her traditional embroidered robes. A respectful hush falls over the gathered family. The children, who moments before might have been engaged in a quiet game with carved wooden animals or a playful tussle over a particularly soft piece of fur, now settle down, their movements stilled, their eyes wide and fixed on Redaru. Even the dogs, if there are any dozing by the fire, seem to sense the shift in atmosphere, their ears perhaps twitching, their breathing quieting. This is a sacred time, a moment when the everyday world recedes and the mythic realm, the world of the Kamui, the gods and spirits, and the ancient culture heroes, draws near. Grandmother Ritaru does not begin immediately. There is a reverent preparation, a series of small, almost imperceptible rituals that signal the transition into the storytelling space. She might take a slow, deliberate sip of cool water from a carved wooden bowl. Clearing her throat softly, her eyes might close for a moment, her lips moving in a silent, personal prayer or an invocation to the spirits of the story she is about to tell, and to the Kamui whose deeds she will recount, inviting them to be present, to guide her words. Perhaps she adjusts the simple, sacred tamashi necklace of glass beads she always wears, or touches a small, smooth, dark stone she keeps tucked in her sash, her personal storytelling charm. A quirky little amulet she believes helps her recall the most ancient and intricate verses with clarity and truth. You can tell she's just about to begin because she performs her famous, almost musically precise, three-part throat, clear a soft ahem, followed by a slightly more resonant and culminating in a very deliberate, attention-focusing ahem-hem. It's the Ainu equivalent of a grand orchestral drum roll and a perfectly timed spotlight combined into one surprisingly effective, low-tech package. It works every single time. Even the tiny mice that sometimes rustle in the dried thatch of the roof seem to hold their breath. Historians and ethnographers who have studied Ainu oral traditions still engage in considerable scholarly discussion and debate regarding the precise nature and perceived role of the Yukar reciter. Were they seen primarily as highly skilled performers and entertainers, valued for their memory, vocal artistry, and their ability to captivate an audience while faithfully preserving vital cultural heritage? Or was their role more deeply spiritual? Perhaps akin to that of a sacred intermediary, a type of shaman who, through the act of recitation, was believed to actively channel the voices and energies of the Kamui, engaging in a profound form of spiritual communion and bringing the divine world into the human hearth. Watching Grandmother Ritaru now, her eyes seemingly looking far beyond the bark walls of the cease, her expression one of deep, almost trance-like concentration. It feels as though she is both a master artist and a humble conduit, a bridge between worlds. The anticipation in the size is now almost thick enough to touch, a tangible presence in the smoky, lamplit air. It's thicker than last winter's deepest ice on the big lake, more potent than the strongest fermented berry wine reserved for special ceremonies. Will tonight's Yukar be an epic of gods and heroes, filled with mighty battles and magical transformations? Will it be one of the charming, often humorous tales of a talking fox outwitting a grumpy, powerful bear Kamui, or, and this is a secret, unspoken fear that sometimes flickers through the minds of the younger listeners? Will it be your well-meaning but occasionally long-winded Uncle Ishgro suddenly deciding he feels inspired to share his surprisingly lengthy and minutely detailed account of how he almost caught that legendary bus-sized giant trout in the upper rapids of the river last spring? Spoiler alert, it's never, ever the trout story when Grandmother Ritaru has settled onto the storyteller's perch with that particular gleam in her eye. No. Tonight promises something more profound. Grandmother Retaru's posture has settled. Her breathing has deepened. The lamp casts flickering highlights on her weathered face, emphasizing the gravity and the gentle warmth in her expression. She is poised, the repository of generations of wisdom, ready to open the ancient treasure chest of her memory. The respectful hush deepens further. The first words of the Yukar, when they finally come, will break this perfect silence not with a shout, but with a soft, rhythmic cadence, the beginning of a soothing, hypnotic journey into the very soul of your Ainu world. The respectful hush in your family's section of the sighs deepens, becoming a soft, expectant silence that seems to draw all the ambient sounds of the northern night. The sigh of wind in the pines, the distant crackle of another hearth fire, even the rhythmic breathing of those already drifting towards sleep, into its embrace. Grandmother Retru, the Yukar Kur, her eyes perhaps still closed for a moment in that deep, inner communion, takes a slow, deliberate breath. The fish oil lamp sputters softly, casting its warm, unsteady glow on her weathered face, highlighting the wisdom etched there by countless seasons and countless stories. And then it begins. Not with a shout, not with a sudden dramatic flourish, but with a voice that seems to rise from the very earth itself, low and sonorous, like ancient river stones smoothed by the ceaseless flow of time. These are the opening verses, the sacred phrases that unlock the pathway to the mythic realm, inviting the divine beings, the Kamui, to draw near and listen alongside you. She might begin with a traditional, almost formulaic opening, words that have been spoken in just this way for generations uncounted. Phrases that identify the type of Yukar about to be shared, perhaps a Kamu Yukar, told from the first-person perspective of a god, or a powerful animal spirit, or a Sakorpa, a heroic epic detailing the adventures of a human culture hero. These initial utterances are like a key turning in an ancient lock, a signal to both the human listeners and the unseen spiritual world that something sacred, something important, is about to unfold. Her voice, at first, might be barely above a whisper, as if testing the air, feeling for the presence of those she is about to invoke. Grandmother Ritaru begins, her words weaving a gentle spell, perhaps something that, if translated from its rich, melodic Ainu, might loosely mean, okay, everyone, honored spirits and beloved family, settle your hearts now, especially you, mischievous little wind spirit who keeps trying to blow smoke directly into my eyes whenever I reach a particularly poignant verse. We're about to commune with the great Kamui, so let us all try to look suitably respectful and, if possible, avoid any sudden, loud snoring from the direction of Uncle Ishikaro's sleeping mat. Ainu religion and worldview are profoundly animistic, centered on the deeply held belief that Kamui, a term encompassing divine spirits, gods, powerful essences, or spiritual energies, reside in all aspects of the natural world. Animals like bears, owls, and foxes are powerful kamui. So too are significant plants, mountains, rivers, lakes, weather phenomena like thunder and wind, and even certain human-made tools or dwellings, if they are treated with proper respect. Therefore, acknowledging these omnipresent spiritual forces and respectfully inviting their participation, or at least their benign attention, is an essential prelude to any significant undertaking, especially one as culturally vital as the recitation of a Yukar. As she speaks these first sacred names, these invocations to the listening world of spirits, Grandmother Retaru might perform a small, almost imperceptible ritual. Perhaps with her first uttered invocation of a powerful kamui, she takes a tiny, almost invisible pinch of dried, sacred mugwort or a single, precious grain of millet from a small pouch at her waist and tosses it discreetly into the heart of the hearth fire. It's like sending a little aromatic, smoky RSVP directly to the spirit world, grand celebration of ancient stories commencing now in our humble size, divine and esteemed beings. Epic tales, moral guidance, and possibly some slightly burnt but well-intentioned chestnuts to be shared later. BYO ectoplasmic presence and respectful listening ears. These opening verses, these careful invocations, do more than just start the story. They transform the very atmosphere within the sies. The familiar, smoky air seems to become charged with a subtle, unseen energy. The flickering lamplight seems to dance with a more profound meaning. You can almost feel the unseen kamui gathering just beyond the firelight's reach. Their ancient, wise presences leaning in to hear the tales of their own kind, their own world, their own interactions with your Ainu ancestors. Or maybe you think with a wry internal smile, that new, almost palpable thickness in the air is just the inevitable result of great Uncle Ishkoro having forgotten to properly stuff the extra moss around the slightly leaky bark panel near the west-facing doorway again, letting in a particularly inquisitive draft. Either way, the atmosphere is definitely thicker, more attentive. Historians and linguists who have studied the rich but often fragmented records of Ainu oral traditions still engage in considerable scholarly debate regarding the exact ritualistic protocols and the full, comprehensive range of spiritual beings typically invoked during the formal opening sequences of different types and regional variations of Yukar. They ponder whether these invocations were largely standardized, passed down verbatim with meticulous care, or if they allowed for significant degrees of improvisation and personalization by the individual Yukar based on the specific story being told, the particular occasion of the recitation, or even the perceived spiritual needs of the assembled audience. Watching Grandmother Ritaru, whose opening tonight seems to include a special, gentle acknowledgement of the little stream spirit that runs near your kotan, perhaps because young Kanto accidentally fell in it earlier, and she wants to ensure all is forgiven. You suspect the tradition provides a sacred framework, but the heart of a gifted storyteller always finds room for a personal touch. As the reciter's voice gains a little more strength, settling into the unique, often melodic and strikingly rhythmic cadence of the Yukar itself. You and the other listeners remain utterly still, your attention completely captivated. This is not passive listening. It is an active participation, a form of communal meditation. Your respect, your focused energy, is part of what makes the space sacred, part of what welcomes the story and the spirits it carries. These opening verses and powerful invocations are far more than just a simple preamble or a throat-clearing exercise. They are a vital spiritual tuning of the communal space in the hearts of all participants, meticulously preparing everyone, human and kamui alike, for the deep, immersive, and often profoundly soothing journey into the timeless, sacred world of the Ainu Yukar. The true story is about to begin. The last echoes of Grandmother Ritaru's opening invocations. Those sacred words that invited the kamui and sanctified your humble side as a space for mythic unfolding still seem to shimmer in the warm, smoky air. A profound stillness settles upon you and your gathered family. A silence not of emptiness, but of deep, shared anticipation. She takes another slow, centering breath, her gaze perhaps fixed on the dancing flames of the hearth, or looking inward, towards the ancient landscapes of memory where these stories reside. And then, her voice changes. It shifts from the formal, almost priestly tone of the invocation to something else entirely, a rhythmic, melodic, and utterly captivating current of sound that is the very soul of the Yukar. This is the hypnotic flow, the enchanting narrative weave that will carry you all into the heart of the epic. Ainu Yukar were not simply spoken or narrated in the way of ordinary prose storytelling. They were performed in a highly distinctive, often deeply rhythmic and melodic, recitative style. This performance could vary from a heightened, metered speech to a more overtly musical chant or song, characterized by specific patterns of intonation, stress, recurring melodic phrases, and sometimes even the use of vocables or non-lexical sounds that enhance their poetic and dramatic qualities. Grandmother Ritaru's voice now finds this ancient groove. It might begin low and sonorous, each syllable given weight and measure, her pitch rising and falling in a cadence that seems to mirror the very rhythms of nature. The sigh of the wind, the beat of waves on a distant shore, the steady pulse of a drumming heart. Her voice shifts into full Yukar mode. It's a gear most ordinary mortals don't even know exists. somewhere comfortably nestled between ancient, wise forest spirit, giving an incredibly engaging TED Talk on the spiritual significance of moss, and a very soothing, deeply resonant lullaby being sung by a particularly philosophical brown bear, who also happens to be a tenured professor of comparative epic poetry and advanced napping techniques. As she launches into the main body of the tale, the words themselves begin to take on an almost physical presence in the room. The Ainu language, rich in evocative imagery and onomatopoeia, lends itself beautifully to this oral art form. The rhythm is insistent, often marked by a subtle emphasis at the end of phrases, creating a lulling, wave-like effect that washes over you. It's not monotonous, though, far from it. Within this overarching rhythm, her voice shifts and modulates, quickening for scenes of action or pursuit, softening for moments of tenderness or sorrow, deepening with gravitas for the pronouncements of powerful kamui or wise elders. You find your own breathing starting to unconsciously synchronize with the cadence of her recitation, your body swaying almost imperceptibly to the ancient beat. The repetition of certain key phrases or epithets, the use of parallel structures, and the inclusion of sakehe, short, often untranslatable refrains or rhythmic interjections that punctuate the narrative, all contribute to the yukar's hypnotic power. These refrains might be a soft hum, a specific repeated syllable, or a short melodic phrase that acts like a recurring musical motif in a grand symphony, anchoring the story and drawing you deeper into its spell. The rhythm is so profoundly hypnotic, so deeply entrancing, you're fairly certain that if you just listened intently enough, for long enough, you could probably achieve genuine enlightenment, or at least finally figure out where you misplaced your other good snowshoe last winter. Or, more likely, you might just drift off into a very deep, very culturally enriched, and profoundly satisfying nap. The stakes, as always when ancient epics are involved, are surprisingly high. It's a testament to the skill of a truly gifted Yukar Kur, like Grandmother Ritaru, that this complex, often hours-long performance, delivered entirely from memory, feels so effortless, so natural. It's more than just an act of prodigious recall, it's a profound act of recreation, of breathing life into ancient words, of embodying the spirits and heroes of the tale. Her vocal control is remarkable, her ability to sustain the intricate rhythms and melodic lines unwavering. There's a belief, a quirky little piece of Ainu folklore whispered among the most dedicated listeners, that if a Yukar Kur's recitation is truly masterful, truly imbued with the spirit of the kamui and the essence of the story, then small, inanimate objects within the sais, a forgotten wooden bowl, a string of dried salmon, even the carved ancestral posts that support the roof, are said to occasionally vibrate or hum softly in sympathetic resonance with the power of the words. Grandmother Ritaru hits a particularly resonant low note, a deep, earthy sound that seems to come from the very heart of Ainu Mosir, and you could swear you just saw one of Uncle Ishkoro's intricately carved fishing net weights do a tiny, almost imperceptible, happy jiggle on the wall where it hangs. Or maybe you concede that's just the fish oil in the lamp having a particularly enthusiastic sputtering moment. The magic, either way, feels undeniably real. Historians and ethnomusicologists who have studied the performance practices of Ainu Yukar still engage in considerable scholarly discussion regarding the precise metrical structures, rhythmic patterns, and potential musical scales or modes employed in traditional recitation. They explore the extent to which these were fixed, ancient traditional forms passed down with minimal variation versus the degree to which they allowed for, or even encouraged, individual artistic improvisation, regional stylistic differences, or personal embellishments by the Yukar Kur, reflecting their own unique artistry and interpretation of the epic material. Listening to the way Grandmother Ritaru sometimes adds a tiny, almost unnoticeable extra beat to a familiar refrain, or lingers just a fraction longer on a particularly poignant word. You sense that while the heart of the Yukar is timeless and unchanging, The spirit of the individual storyteller always finds a way to breathe its own unique life into the performance. This hypnotic flow, this rhythmic, almost sung enchantment, is not just a stylistic embellishment, it is fundamental to the Yukar's power. It bypasses the critical, everyday mind and speaks directly to something deeper, something older within you. It's what transforms the sais from a simple dwelling into a sacred theater, the flickering lamplight into a portal to the mythic past, and the gathered family into a community of shared, transcendent experience. The ancient words wash over you, soothing, captivating, and carrying you effortlessly into the heart of the story. Grandmother Ritaru's voice, that ancient, hypnotic river of sound, now carries you deeper into the heart of the Yukar. The introductory cadences have settled, the sacred space has been established, and the epic tale itself begins to unfold, painting vivid pictures in the smoky, lamplit air of your sais. Tonight, as is so often the case with these cherished oral traditions, the narrative centers on the Kamui, the divine beings who inhabit every facet of your Ainu world, and often, these powerful spirits choose to walk among you or interact with your ancestors in the guise of animals. You lean closer to the hearth, a willing captive of the unfolding story, ready to learn the wisdom or witness the power of a god in animal form. A cornerstone of traditional Ainu spirituality and worldview is the profound belief that many animals, particularly those significant for sustenance, possessing unique power, or exhibiting remarkable characteristics, such as bears, deer, salmon, owls, foxes, and even smaller creatures like spiders or insects, are not merely fauna but are in fact kamui, a term broadly encompassing gods, divine spirits, or powerful spiritual essences from the heavenly realms, visiting the world of humans, Ainu Mosir in their animal manifestations. These animal kamui are believed to possess their own societies, emotions, and intentions, and their interactions with humans are governed by complex rules of respect and reciprocity. After their earthly sojourn, and often through specific Ainu rituals like the Iomante bear-sending ceremony, they are believed to return to their divine realm, carrying with them the offerings and prayers of the Ainu people. This understanding transforms every encounter with the natural world into a potential interaction with the sacred. Tonight, Grandmother Ritaru's voice might be weaving a tale about Kimun Kamui, the powerful god of the mountains who often chooses to manifest in the formidable form of a great brown bear. You hope it's the one where he engages in a lengthy, surprisingly witty debate with the mischievous river spirits about fishing rights and the proper etiquette for sharing a particularly plump salmon. A story always filled with earthy humor and subtle lessons about respecting boundaries. And not, you silently pray. The much longer, more philosophically dense one where Kimun Kamui develops a profound existential crisis about the true meaning of hibernation and the ethics of consuming an entire thicket of wild berries without first offering a formal apology to each individual berry plant. That particular Yukar, while no doubt deeply profound, does tend to go on a bit, especially when your eyelids are already feeling heavy. Her voice paints the scene, the deep, echoing silence of the mountain forests. The rustle of leaves as the great bear Kamui moves with surprising grace for such a massive being. The wisdom in his ancient eyes. She might subtly alter her tone to mimic his deep, rumbling speech, or the lighter, more skittish voices of the humans or other lesser Kamui he encounters. Through the narrative, you learn of his power, his generosity if properly respected, or perhaps his displeasure if humans have been wasteful or disrespectful in their hunting, or their use of the forest's gifts. These stories are not just fables, they are living teachings, reinforcing the intricate web of relationships that bind your people to the natural world and the divine beings within it. The storyteller describes the cunning of Kaironup Kamui, the fox god, with such intricate detail, such admiration for its cleverness and its ability to outwit even the most formidable foes, often including pompous or foolish humans. You almost expect to see a pair of bright, intelligent vulpine eyes gleaming in the darkest shadows of the sice. Or at least, you make a mental note to check your small, personal stash of smoked fish very carefully in the morning, just in case the Fox Kamui's spirit was paying particularly close attention to that part of the epic and felt inspired to engage in a little light, illustrative pilfering. There's a charming, deeply ingrained belief in your community, a quirky little piece of fireside wisdom, that if you dream of a specific animal kamui on the same night you hear its Yukar recited, it signifies that the kamui has taken a particular interest in you and has a special message or a piece of guidance to impart. This leads to much quiet, introspective dream analysis the following morning, with family members gently helping each other to unravel the potential meanings. Did the bear kamui offer you berries in your dream? Perhaps a sign of impending good fortune or a successful hunt. Did the owl kamui stare at you with its unblinking, all-seeing eyes? Maybe a reminder to pay closer attention to your own intuition or to observe the world around you with greater acuity. Of course, if you dream that Uncle Ishikaro's prize fishing lure has transformed into a talking salmon, who then proceeds to lecture you for 3 hours on the declining standards of Ainu lure craftsmanship, that probably just means you ate too much of the heavy evening stew. Historians and scholars of comparative mythology still engage in fascinating discussions and debates regarding the exact origins and the complex symbolic evolution of specific Ainu animal kamui narratives. They explore whether these tales are primarily rooted in ancient shamanistic hunting cults and totemic ancestral connections common to many circumpolar peoples, if they represent sophisticated allegories for human social behavior, ecological understanding, and the delicate balance of nature, or if they are literal accounts of perceived interactions with powerful sentient spiritual beings who chose to manifest in animal form. As Grandmother Redaru's voice fills the saisei with the hooting call of Kotan Kor Kamui, the great horned owl god who watches over the village, you feel that all these interpretations might simply be different facets of a single profound truth that the world around you is alive, sacred, and filled with beings far older and wiser than yourselves. According to this particular Yukar about Kotan Kor Kamui, the owl god sees everything, knows everything that transpires within the village and the surrounding forest, and is apparently a surprisingly harsh, if generally benevolent, critic of poorly sung or disrespectful lullabies offered to restless infants. Good to know. You make a mental note to stick to respectful, appreciative silence during any future owl-related bedtime stories, lest you inadvertently offend a deity with exceptionally good hearing and exacting musical standards. These ancient tales of gods and animal guys, delivered through the soothing, rhythmic cadence of the Yukar, are so much more than mere entertainment for a long winter's night. They are a vital way of understanding your place in this sacred, interconnected world. They reinforce the Ainu relationship with the myriad forms of life that share Ainu Mosir, reminding you of the respect due to all beings and the delicate balance that must be maintained. The lamplight flickers. Grandmother Redaru's voice weaves on, and you are transported, effortlessly, into a world where bears dispense wisdom, foxes outsmart humans, and owls keep a watchful, divine eye over your sleeping village. The last echoes of the owl kamui's hooting wisdom, or perhaps the mischievous chuckle of the fox god as he successfully pilfered a celestial salmon, fade into the warm, smoky stillness of your sis. Grandmother Redaru pauses, perhaps taking another slow sip of water, her eyes still distant, reflecting the firelight as if holding on to the very essence of the spirit world she just described. The air hums with the lingering presence of those animal kamui, but then, with a subtle shift in her posture, a slight clearing of her throat, that famous three-part throat clear you know so well, she signals a change in the narrative stream. The Yukar is not yet over. Now her voice, perhaps taking on a slightly different timbre, a shade more human yet still touched with the mythic, begins to weave a new kind of tale, the adventures and profound teachings of Okikurmi, the great culture hero of your Ainu people. Ah, an Okikurmi epic. you settle back onto your bearskin, a fresh wave of anticipation washing over you. Get ready for some serious divine or semi-divine intervention. Probably a few spectacularly badly behaved minor demons or troublesome local spirits getting their just desserts. And at least one instance where Okakurmi invents something incredibly useful, like the art of not accidentally setting your own hut on fire while trying to cook fish. Entirely by accident while attempting to do something else entirely, Okikurmi, also known by several variations of his name such as Okikurumi, Rera Kamui Okikurmi, Child of the Wind God, Oina Kamui Ancient Kamui, or sometimes simply as Ioina Kamui, the being we call divine, is a central and deeply revered culture hero in Ainu mythology, often depicted as semi-divine or as a benevolent Kamui who descended to Earth in human form. He is credited with teaching the Ainu people many essential survival skills, cultural practices, social customs, and moral laws, as well as acting as a vital intermediary between the world of humans and the world of the Kamui. He is your Prometheus, your Maui, your wise teacher, and your heroic champion, all rolled into one. His stories are the bedrock of Ainu identity, explaining how your people learned to live in Ainu Mosir, your precious homeland. Tonight, Grandmother Ritaru's voice might transport you to a time when the world was younger, wilder, and humans were still struggling to find their way. Perhaps she recounts the tale of how Okikurmi, with his immense strength and even greater cunning, battled a monstrous, many-eyed swamp spirit of unpleasant soggy feet and perpetual mildew that was terrorizing a small Ainu village, preventing them from reaching the best reed gathering grounds. It's a lesser-known peril. This particular swamp spirit, not quite as dramatic as a world-ending demon, but its threat of eternally damp moccasins and a pervasive mildewy aroma is a deeply relatable one if you've ever tried to gather reeds by the river during an unexpectedly prolonged early spring thaw. The narrative tension, as Okikurmi devises a clever plan involving a decoy made of woven grass and an unusually pungent variety of wild garlic, is surprisingly damp yet utterly captivating. Or maybe it's a story of his wisdom. You love the part where Okikurmi, after observing the struggles of the first Ainu people to catch the swift and elusive salmon, patiently teaches them how to construct a fishing weir, how to read the currents of the river, and, most importantly, how to properly honor the spirit of the salmon kamui with offerings and songs of gratitude to ensure their continued return each year. His teachings are not just practical, they are imbued with a deep spiritual understanding, emphasizing respect, balance, and reciprocity with the natural world and all its beings. This particular lesson, about not boasting too excessively about your fishing skills lest the salmon kamui take offense and withhold its bounty, is one you feel your esteemed Uncle Ishkro, who is currently engaged in a very quiet, very one-sided staring contest with a particularly uncooperative ember in the hearth, could still greatly benefit from. Frankly, there's also that one quirky, rarely told, and slightly embarrassing story from Okukurmi's younger, more experimental, and perhaps less divinely inspired days. It's the tale of his great useless invention. Apparently, before he successfully taught the Ainu how to make fire with a fire drill, he spent a considerable amount of time trying to invent a device that would automatically fan him with eagle feathers whenever he felt slightly too warm. The prototype, involving a complex series of levers, sinew ropes, and a rather bewildered and entirely uncooperative captive snowshoe hare, was, by all accounts, a spectacular failure, resulting mostly in a lot of tangled sinew, a few ruffled eagle feathers, and one very indignant, and now significantly balder, hare. It's not a tale that showcases his usual heroic competence, but Grandmother Ritaru sometimes tells it with a mischievous twinkle in her eye, perhaps as a gentle reminder that even the greatest culture heroes have their off days, and that innovation often involves a few gloriously messy missteps before achieving true brilliance. Historians and folklorists who study Ainu oral traditions still engage in considerable scholarly debate regarding the precise nature and origins of the figure of Okikurmi. They ponder the extent to which he represents a singular, possibly historical or semi-historical, individual whose extraordinary deeds were later mythologized and embellished over generations, versus being a more composite, archetypal figure embodying core Ainu ideals of wisdom, strength, and cultural ingenuity, possibly with different regional variations of his stories and even different names for essentially similar hero figures across various Ainu communities. As you listen to the tale of his courage and his cleverness, he feels utterly real, a tangible presence in the sis, his voice almost echoing in Grandmother Retru's own. The adventures of Okikurmi are more than just thrilling fireside entertainment. They are foundational narratives, explaining the origins of your most important tools, your most sacred ceremonies, your wisest laws, and your deepest understanding of how to live a good and proper Ainu life. They teach courage in the face of adversity, resilience in times of hardship, the importance of community, and the absolute necessity of maintaining respectful relationships with the Kamui who share your world. His mythic feats are a blueprint for survival, a guide to navigating the challenges and embracing the beauty of Ainu Mosir. And so, Grandmother Retaru's voice, that soothing, rhythmic current, carries you along Okakurmi's path, through monster-haunted forests, across storm-tossed seas, into the very councils of the gods. You feel his struggles, celebrate his triumphs, and absorb his timeless wisdom, all within the warm, safe, and smoky embrace of your family hearth, the lamplight flickering like a distant, guiding star. Grandmother Retaru's voice, that ancient and hypnotic current, continues to flow through the warm, smoky air of your kais. Perhaps now deep in a tale of Okikurmi's cunning or a bear Kamui's majestic pronouncements. As the epic unfolds, you become increasingly aware not just of the characters and their mythic deeds, but of the world they inhabit. The Yukar does not just tell a story, it paints a landscape. It breathes life into the very forests, rivers, and mountains of Ainu Mosir, your beloved homeland. Nature's voice speaks with a profound and intimate clarity through the verses, grounding every adventure, every spiritual encounter, in the tangible, sacred reality of the world just outside your bark-walled home. You listen, and in your mind's eye, you see it all. The deep, primeval forests, where towering firs and ancient oaks create a canopy so dense that sunlight dapples the mossy floor in shifting, mysterious patterns. Her words evoke the sharp, resinous scent of pine needles underfoot, the damp, earthy aroma of decaying leaves, the sudden, breathtaking sight of a sunlit glade where deer, the graceful Yuk Kamui, might be grazing, their ears twitching at the slightest sound. Grandmother Retaru is now describing, with a storyteller's loving precision, the forest of perpetual mild confusion, where the rivers flow backwards and all the squirrels are surprisingly good at philosophical debate. You're fairly certain this particular enchanted woodland isn't marked on any actual physical map of Hokkaido, but it sounds exactly like the sort of place your easily distractible Uncle Ishikoro would definitely manage to get profoundly lost in. For purely artistic and deeply contemplative reasons, of course, Ainu Yukar are renowned among scholars of oral literature for their remarkably rich, extraordinarily detailed, and often breathtakingly poetic descriptions of the natural environment of their homeland. These epics are filled with precise observations of specific flora and fauna, vivid depictions of geographical features like mountains, valleys, and coastlines, and nuanced portrayals of the dramatic seasonal changes that define life in the north. From the deep, silent snows of winter to the explosive green rebirth of spring, the lush abundance of summer, and the poignant, colorful decline of autumn. This is not just set dressing. The land itself is often an active participant in the epics, a character with its own moods, its own spirits, its own sacred power. The storyteller's voice makes you feel the bite of the winter wind as it howls down from the snow-capped peaks, the ones that are home to the fearsome mountain Kamui. The Yukar's description of a midwinter blizzard can be so vivid, so filled with the imagined shriek of the gale and the sting of driven ice particles, you can almost feel your own eyebrows beginning to frost over just listening to it. You instinctively pull your warm bearskin robe a little tighter around your shoulders, even though the size hearth is actually radiating a quite comfortable and entirely blizzard-free warmth. That's the sheer immersive power of good storytelling. Or you concede. It might just be that particularly persistent draft still sneaking in from under the door where Uncle Ishkaro, despite several gentle reminders, still hasn't quite managed to stuff the extra insulating moss properly. Through the verses, you journey along rushing, clear water rivers, teeming with salmon kamui on their spawning runs. You can almost smell the damp river stones, hear the splash of leaping fish, feel the cool spray on your face. You traverse vast marshes where cranes call, and climb rugged volcanic slopes where only the hardiest alpine flowers dare to bloom. Each plant, each animal, each landmark mentioned in the Yukar is familiar, yet seen through the lens of the story, it gains a deeper, mythic resonance. There's a particular passage in one of the older, more obscure Yukar that grandmother Roteru occasionally recites, one that describes a hidden, almost mythical, creek of 1,000 golden trout. A perfect, untouched fishing spot where the trout are said to be so plentiful and so eager that they practically leap into your waiting basket, singing small, happy trout songs as they do so. For generations, it's been a quirky, whispered legend amongst the younger Ainu listeners in your kotan. This dream of someday, somehow, stumbling upon that legendary, musically inclined, and bountiful creek, guided only by the Yukar's ancient, poetic, and frustratingly vague geographical clues. Historians and ethnobotanists who study Ainu culture often debate the extent to which the highly detailed environmental descriptions, including references to specific plants and their uses or animal behaviors, found within Ainu Yukar represent an accurate, almost scientific, repository of place-specific ecological and geographical knowledge meticulously passed down through generations. They question whether these are literal, map-like descriptions, or if they are perhaps more stylized, archetypal, or even metaphorical landscapes, carefully crafted to serve the narrative flow, symbolic resonance, and moral or spiritual teachings of the epics themselves. As grandmother Ritaru describes a perilous mountain pass guarded by a grumpy rock kamui, who, according to this particular verse, only allows passage if you can correctly answer 3 extremely tricky riddles about cloud formations and successfully identify, by scent alone, 7 different varieties of edible, high-altitude moss. You find yourself hoping it's more metaphorical. Your personal moss identification by scent skills are, frankly, a bit rusty. Suddenly, your own daily chores of keeping the hearth fire going and maybe whittling a new fish spear don't seem quite so terribly bad in comparison. The language of the Yukar, the ancient Ainu tongue, is itself a reflection of this deep connection to nature. It is rich with onomatopoeia that mimics the sounds of the forest and the river, with evocative metaphors drawn from the landscape, and with specific, nuanced terms for different types of snow, ice, wind, and forest growth that a more southern, less nature-immersed language might lack. Even if you don't understand every single archaic word or complex grammatical construction, the sheer musicality and vivid imagery of the recitation paints an undeniable world. This nature's voice in verse is a core, life-giving element of every Yukar. It grounds the most fantastical tales of gods and heroes in the beloved, familiar soil of Ainu Mosir. It reinforces your people's profound spiritual and physical connection to this land, reminding you that you are not separate from it, but an integral part of its sacred, breathing wholeness. The stories make the landscape itself come alive. Each mountain, river, and ancient tree imbued with spirit, with memory, and with a voice that speaks directly to the Ainu heart. A voice carried with such soothing, timeless power on the breath of your grandmother. The vivid imagery of Ainu Mosir, with its sacred mountains, whispering forests, and rivers teeming with life, continues to unfold in your mind's eye, painted there by the enduring power of grandmother Ritaru's voice and the ancient words of the Yukar. You've journeyed with Okikurmi on his heroic quests. You've listened to the pronouncements of mighty Bear Kamui, and you've marveled at the cunning of the fox god. But as you sink deeper into the rhythmic cadence of the recitation, you begin to perceive another layer, a subtle but profoundly important dimension, woven intricately into the very fabric of these epic tales. This is the wisdom within the weave, the life lessons, the cultural values, the ancestral knowledge, all gently and skillfully embedded within the enchanting narrative, nourishing your understanding as much as the evening meal nourished your body. These Yukar are far more than just captivating entertainment for a long, dark northern night. Ainu Yukar, in all their diverse forms, served as a primary and highly effective vehicle for transmitting a vast body of traditional knowledge, encompassing social customs, ethical principles, moral values, practical wisdom concerning survival and resource management, religious beliefs, and the proper conduct required towards both the human community and the myriad kamui of the spirit world. They are, in essence, the unwritten constitution, the ethical guidebook, and the encyclopedic memory of your Ainu people, passed faithfully from one generation to the next through the power of the spoken word and the art of the storyteller. The lessons are rarely delivered as overt, preachy sermons. Instead, they emerge organically from the characters' actions, their triumphs, their failures, and the consequences that follow. You might hear a tale of a hunter who, through arrogance or greed, disrespects the spirit of the deer he has slain, failing to perform the proper rituals of gratitude. The story will then unfold to show the misfortunes that befall him. Perhaps his luck in the hunt vanishes, or illness strikes his family, until he learns humility and makes amends with the offended deer Kamue. The moral is clear, yet subtly conveyed: all life is sacred. Respect and reciprocity are paramount. So, the moral of this particular Euchre segment seems to be: don't unnecessarily annoy the powerful mountain god, especially if he appears to be having a particularly bad fur day and is radiating an aura of do not poke with stick. Also, it is generally advisable to always share your last, most delicious piece of smoked deer jerky with a surprisingly articulate talking owl, because said owl might just be your formidable great-aunt Kamui Fuchi, the hearth goddess, in disguise, and you really don't want to be on her bad side. Standard, eminently practical life advice. Really, when you live in a world interwoven with spirits, there are countless little nuggets of ancestral wisdom woven into the grand narratives. You learn the correct way to approach a bear den, the signs that foretell a sudden change in weather, which plants are safe to eat and which hold powerful medicine, and the intricate social etiquette required when visiting another koton or interacting with strangers. There's a particular, very short, almost proverb-like Yukar, more of a pithy saying, really, that grandmother Ritaru often quotes. Something about a single arrow is easily broken, but a bundle of arrows is strong. It's your people's quirky, often repeated shorthand for the importance of community solidarity and cooperation. A little piece of ancient wisdom that pops up in everyday conversation whenever someone is being a bit too individualistic or forgetting their obligations to the group. The storyteller, the Yukarkur, thus becomes more than just a reciter of tales. They are a guardian and transmitter of this vital cultural knowledge, a living conduit for ancestral wisdom. Through their skilled performance, through the emotional depth they bring to the characters and their dilemmas, they make these lessons resonate deeply with the listeners. You learn so much from these captivating epics. Like, apparently, according to a particularly obscure verse in the tale of the adventures of the young man who argued with a glacier, the correct and most effective way to apologize to a sentient and highly offended ancient riverstone one that you may have inadvertently kicked while fording a stream involves a specific, rather complex, three-part harmony sung directly at the stone, accompanied by a small, heartfelt offering of exceptionally well-brewed, slightly bitter seaweed tea. Good to know for future reference. Should you ever find yourself in a diplomatic incident with a grumpy piece of geology? Historians and anthropologists who have closely examined the thematic content and narrative structures of Ainu Yukar still engage in considerable scholarly discussion regarding the degree to which the moral and ethical frameworks presented within these epics were entirely static, meticulously preserving unchanging ancestral laws and an immutable worldview, versus their inherent capacity to subtly adapt, evolve, and be reinterpreted by storytellers over many generations to address new social challenges, incorporate novel experiences, or to emphasize particular lessons that held contemporary relevance for their current audience. Even before the widespread external cultural pressures of later centuries, listening to Grandmother Rataru tonight, as she seems to subtly emphasize a passage about the importance of inter-village cooperation in the face of a particularly harsh narrative winter, you can't help but feel that these stories are both timelessly ancient and wonderfully alive, capable of speaking directly to the present moment. You see your uncle Ishikuro, a man whose prowess in fishing is legendary but whose tendency to, shall we say, creatively enhance the size and ferocity of his catches in the retelling is equally well known. Suddenly become very, very interested in meticulously examining the intricate carvings on his tobacco pipe stem. Grandmother Rataru is currently, and with great gentle subtlety, weaving in a particular passage from an Okikurumi epic that deals directly with the spiritual and social importance of not boasting excessively about one's fishing prowess, lest the salmon kamui take offense and the fish mysteriously decide to vacation elsewhere next season. Smooth. Uncle Ishikoro, very smooth. Your sudden fascination with carpentry is entirely convincing. And so, the Yukar flows on, a river of words carrying not just adventure and myth, but the very essence of what it means to be Ainu. The wisdom within its weave subtly shapes your understanding of the world, your responsibilities to your community, your respect for the kamui, and your connection to the land. It's a gentle, ongoing education of the heart and mind, delivered by Lamplight, ensuring that the ancestral knowledge, the core values, and the unique spirit of your people are carried forward, strong and true, with each soothing, memorable, and often surprisingly practical recitation, the ancient wisdom, woven so skillfully into the fabric of the Yukar by Grandmother Rataru's timeless voice, settles into your mind, not as a dry lesson, but as a living truth experienced through the unfolding drama of gods and heroes. As you listen, captivated by the rhythmic flow of the narrative and the vivid imagery it conjures, you become increasingly aware that this is not a solitary experience. You are part of a circle, a community of listeners, young and old, all gathered in the warm, smoky embrace of the sais, all breathing the same fire-scented air, all transported together by the power of these ancient words. This shared journey, this collective holding of breath and rapt attention, is as much a part of the Yukar's magic as the tale itself. Around the central hearth, your family and perhaps a few invited guests from a neighboring hearth group are arranged in a comfortable, informal semicircle. The flickering lamplight plays across their faces, revealing a spectrum of expressions. The elders, like Grandmother Rataru herself, might have their eyes closed, nodding almost imperceptibly to the familiar rhythms. Perhaps their lips silently forming the ancient words they too have known since childhood. The adults, your parents, aunts, and uncles, listen with a focused intensity, their own daily cares and responsibilities momentarily forgotten as they immerse themselves in the world of the kamui. And the children, even the youngest ones not yet capable of grasping the full depth of the epic's meaning, sit wide-eyed and still, mesmerized by the sheer musicality of the language and the captivating presence of the storyteller. The performance of Ainu Yukar was traditionally a deeply significant communal event, with family members, clan relatives, and sometimes guests from other Khotan villages gathering together, often for many hours, typically in the evening after the day's work was done, to listen attentively as an elder or skilled reciter shared these vital oral epics. This shared experience of listening was crucial for social cohesion, intergenerational bonding, and the collective transmission of cultural knowledge and identity. The only sounds in the sisse, apart from grandmother Ritaru's voice weaving its hypnotic spell, are the soft crackling of the fire, the occasional sigh of the wind against the thatched roof, a sound that sometimes seems to harmonize with the epic's more mournful passages, and perhaps your uncleish Koro's stomach occasionally rumbling a surprisingly dramatic, if slightly off-key, counterpoint to a particularly tense moment in the narrative. He always insists, with a perfectly straight face, that it's just his way of adding vital percussive emphasis to the storytelling. None of you are entirely convinced, but it's become a familiar, almost comforting, part of the evening's soundscape. There's a palpable sense of shared breath in the room. As the storyteller's voice rises with excitement during a description of Okikurumi's battle with a fearsome, many-headed water serpent, you might notice a collective intake of breath from the listeners, a shared tension. When a trickster fox Kamui plays a particularly cunning prank, a soft wave of shared amusement, a few stifled chuckles, ripples through the group. And when the Yukar touches upon themes of loss, or the poignant departure of a beloved Kamui back to its divine realm, you can almost feel a collective sigh, a shared understanding of the beautiful sorrow that often lies at the heart of these ancient tales. Young Kanto, your little cousin who usually possesses the attention span of a particularly hyperactive snowshoe hare, is so utterly engrossed in the tale of Okikurumi wrestling the monstrous, man-eating sea monster. His eyes are approximately the size of two very large, very well-polished river stones. He's either deeply, profoundly captivated by the heroic narrative, or mildly, existentially terrified by the very concept of a sea monster with that many teeth. Or, most likely, a delightful combination of both. It's a classic Yukar experience for the young ones. There's a quirky, unspoken tradition that follows the conclusion of a particularly powerful or spiritually resonant Yukar. When grandmother Ritaru's voice finally falls silent and the last echoes of the epic fade away, no one speaks immediately. A deep, respectful quiet settles over the sighs for several long moments. It's a shared space for the spirit of the story to settle, for its power and its wisdom to be absorbed by each listener before the everyday world gently reasserts itself. It's considered rather poor form to immediately pipe up with, "Anyone fancy another roasted chestnut before this sacred silence has run its natural course?" You try not to blink too much during the actual recitation either, lest you miss a crucial nuance in the subtle way grandmother's left eyebrow twitches ever so slightly when she's describing a particularly deceitful weasel Kamui who is about to try and sell someone a faulty canoe. The micro-expressions of a master Yukarkur, you've learned, are where all the real subtextual drama often lies. Historians and linguists who study complex oral traditions like the Ainu Yukar still engage in fascinated scholarly debate regarding the specific mnemonic techniques and cognitive processes employed by both the highly skilled Yukar Kur to accurately memorize and fluently recite such vast quantities of intricate epic poetry, sometimes lasting for many hours or even multiple nights, and by the audiences to effectively internalize, comprehend, and culturally transmit these complex narratives and their deeply embedded layers of cultural knowledge, especially in societies that relied predominantly on oral, rather than written, forms of record-keeping and communication. Watching the effortless flow of words from grandmother Ritaru and seeing the rapt, understanding faces around you, it feels less like a feat of mere memory and more like a tapping into a shared, ancient consciousness, a collective dream time made manifest through voice and attentive listening. This experience of shared breath, of rapt, communal attention, of hearts and minds all focused on the same ancient stream of words and rhythms, is a powerful binding agent. It forges deep bonds of community, reinforces shared values, and creates a collective emotional landscape. In this warm, firelit space, surrounded by your kin, you are not just an individual hearing a story, You are an active participant in a timeless ritual, a living link in the great chain of Ainu tradition, all connected by the soothing, captivating, and profoundly unifying power of the Yukar. The sacred silence that followed the last powerful passage of the Yukar gently dissipates, not broken, but rather transformed, as grandmother Ritaru subtly shifts her posture, perhaps taking a moment to gaze into the heart of the crackling fire as if drawing fresh inspiration from its ancient, dancing flames. The story is not over, not by a long measure, but this brief pause allows you to become more keenly aware of the intricate artistry, the specific rhythmic tools that she employs to weave such a captivating and deeply soothing oral tapestry. It's not just what she says, but how she says it, that draws you and everyone else in the Sais into the very heart of the mythic world. Her voice itself is an instrument of incredible range and precision. It's not simply a monotone narration. She modulates her tone, her pitch, her volume, and her pacing with consummate skill to embody different characters, to convey shifting emotions, and to build or release tension within the narrative. When she speaks as a mighty bear kamui, her voice might drop to a low, resonant rumble, a sound that seems to vibrate in your very chest. When a mischievous Api Fuchi Kamui, the fire goddess, is speaking, her tone might become lighter, quicker, with a crackling, almost spark-like energy to it. And when Okikurmi, your great culture hero, delivers a wise teaching or faces a moment of profound challenge, her voice can fill with a quiet strength, a noble gravity that commands your deepest attention. Grandmother Ritaru is now employing what you and your cousins affectionately and with a touch of awe refer to as the voice of impending divine judgment, usually reserved for moments when a particularly arrogant or foolish minor kamui is about to receive its karmic comeuppance from a more powerful deity, or on rare domestic occasions, when your Uncle Ishkuro is caught trying to sneak a third, entirely unauthorized, helping of the precious ceremonial dried salmon before the main feast has even begun. It's a vocal technique that is remarkably effective in both epic mythological scenarios and more mundane household transgressions. Beyond these nuanced vocal characterizations, a key element in the Yukar's hypnotic flow is its inherent rhythm and meter, often underscored by the storyteller's deliberate physical actions. Some, though not all, Ainu Yukar reciters, particularly when performing certain types of heroic epics or more rhythmically structured Kamui Yukar, and varying by regional tradition and personal style, utilized a repni or rekut unpei. This was typically a carved wooden stick, sometimes simply a smoothed piece of driftwood or a specially designated hearth poker, which the Yukar Kur would tap rhythmically against the wooden hearth frame. A small sounding board, or even their own thigh or the floor, marking the beat, emphasizing key phrases, or maintaining the intricate metrical structure of the verses. If Grandmother Ritaru uses such a tool, its steady, percussive beat becomes the underlying heartbeat of the epic, a sound that seems to draw all the listeners into a shared, ancient pulse. Her repnai, which she affectionately calls Little Thunder, because her grandfather, a renowned Yukar Kur himself, claimed it was carved from a branch of a tree struck by a friendly lightning kamui, isn't just tapping out a simple beat, it seems to have a life of its own. She's had it for so many seasons, this polished piece of dark, ancient wood, that it feels like an extension of her own hand, an ancestral conduit for the story's spirit. It's set in your family, a quirky little piece of fireside lore that Little Thunder is particularly attuned to the older, more sacred Yukar. When those tales are told, the Repni's tap is said to resonate with a deeper, richer tone, almost as if the wood itself remembers the ancient words and hums in sympathy, subtly guiding the flow of the narrative. And sometimes, you've noticed when she's deep in a particularly dramatic passage, she might use Little Thunder to not just keep time, but to gently, almost imperceptibly tap the shoulder of young Kanto if he's starting to nod off, effectively making it a multi-purpose ancestral artifact of both rhythmic accompaniment and subtle grandchild wrangling. Other rhythmic devices are woven into the performance as well, Her hands might move with subtle, illustrative gestures, not grand theatrical movements, but small shifts that emphasize a character's emotion or an action in the story. The strategic use of silence is another powerful tool in her arsenal. Just when you think Okikurmi is about to be irrevocably devoured by the monstrous, multi-fanged snow serpent of the northern wastes, or when a Kamui is poised to deliver a world-altering pronouncement, she will pause. The silence stretches, thick with anticipation, drawing every eye, every ear, every thought towards her. Your own heart seems to stop. Someone in the side seat invariably coughs nervously, breaking the spell for a fraction of a second. Then, bam, her voice resumes, perhaps in a whisper, perhaps with a sudden surge of power, and the story rushes forward once more. It's masterful emotional whiplash, Ainu storytelling style, and it keeps you utterly hooked. Historians and ethnomusicologists who study the performance of Ainu Yukar continue to engage in detailed analysis and scholarly debate regarding the exact function and symbolic meaning of the repnai in the recitation process. They consider whether it was primarily a practical, metronome-like device for maintaining rhythmic control and aiding the reciter's memory over many hours of performance. A dramatic tool used for emphasis, punctuation, and creating sound effects. A sacred object in its own right, perhaps connecting the storyteller to the spirit world or the very rhythm of the cosmos. Or, most likely, a complex combination of all these vital elements. Watching Grandmother Ritaru wield Little Thunder with such effortless precision, its taps perfectly synchronized with the rise and fall of her voice and the emotional beats of the story. It feels like all those functions are seamlessly, powerfully intertwined. These rhythmic tools, both the innate musicality of her voice and the percussive punctuation of the repni, are essential to the Yukarkur's ancient art. They transform the recitation from a mere string of words into a living, breathing, almost palpable performance. They create the hypnotic current that carries you, the listener, away from the mundane realities of your saisei and into the timeless, sacred landscapes of myth and legend, allowing the spirits of the Kamui and the heroes of old to walk among you once more, their voices resonating in the soothing, rhythmic cadence of your grandmother's song. Grandmother Ritaru's voice, with its ancient rhythms and the percussive punctuation of Little Thunder, her cherished repni, continues to weave its spell, drawing you ever deeper into the mythic tapestry of the Yukar. You are lost in the world of gods and heroes, talking animals and enchanted landscapes, and as your ears are filled with the soothing, hypnotic cadence of the recitation, your eyes, too, become part of the immersive experience, captivated by the subtle, ever-shifting drama of light and shadow that plays out within the warm, smoky confines of your sais. The flickering lamplight, in its own quiet way, becomes another storyteller, painting moving pictures on the bark walls and in the very air around you. The primary sources of illumination in your Ainu home at night are, of course, the central hearth, the apo eye, and one or two small fish oil or seal oil lamps. The hearth itself, now likely a bed of glowing embers with occasional taller flames leaping up when a fresh piece of wood is added, casts a warm, ruddy glow upwards and outwards. The lamps, their wicks of twisted moss or plant fiber sputtering gently in their shallow stone or shell basins, provide smaller, more concentrated pools of unsteady golden light. The traditional Ainu sais, with its substantial thatched roof, often windowless walls or only a small sacred window, Kamui Puya are not designed for general illumination, and its central smoke-producing hearth would have been a relatively dimly lit environment, especially during the long northern nights. This limited dynamic firelight and lamplight would inevitably create a rich interplay of deep shadows and moving highlights, profoundly shaping the visual atmosphere for any evening activities like storytelling. This isn't the even, unchanging brightness of a future, electrically illuminated room. This is a living light, breathing with the fire, dancing with every flicker of the lamp flame. And it is this very quality, this unsteadiness, this constant ebb and flow of light and darkness that transforms your familiar sais into a perfect theater for the imagination. As Grandmother Ritaru describes a fearsome, shadowy Wenkamui evil spirit emerging from the depths of a dark forest. The shadows in the far corners of the longhouse seem to deepen, to coalesce, perhaps even to take on vaguely menacing, indistinct shapes. You find yourself glancing instinctively towards that particularly dark patch over by the stored fishing nets, half expecting to see a pair of ghostly eyes gleaming back. The lighting is so wonderfully atmospheric. You're pretty sure that slightly forlorn pile of drying seaweed in the corner, the one Uncle Ishkro forgot to take outside, just twitched and might actually be a miner, and slightly damp. Water spirit who has decided to tune in for the rest of the epic. Or you concede, it's just drying seaweed slowly succumbing to gravity. The line gets wonderfully, thrillingly blurry after the third hour of epic poetry recited by flickering fish oil lamp. When the Yukar speaks of Okikurmi, your culture hero, standing bravely before a towering, angry mountain kamui, the way the lamplight catches the planes of Grandmother Ritaru's own face, one moment highlighting her kindly, familiar features, the next, as she alters her voice to embody the booming pronouncements of the god, casting her brow and cheekbones into stark, imposing relief, makes her seem to transform before your very eyes. One moment, she is your beloved grandmother. The next, her shadow thrown large and imposing upon the bark wall behind her. She is the mountain god, her voice echoing with an ancient, fearsome authority. It's remarkably effective. And if you're being perfectly honest, just a little bit terrifying if you happen to owe her any outstanding chores you conveniently forgot about earlier in the day. There's a particular deeply gnarled knot in one of the main wooden support beams near your family's sleeping platform. It's just a knot. Really? But when the lamp is positioned just so, and Grandmother Ritaru is deep into a passage describing the wisdom of Fuchi Kamui, the ancient hearth goddess, the flickering light on that knot, with its swirling grain and dark hollows, often creates a startlingly vivid, if fleeting, impression of a wise old woman's face, watching over you all. It's become a quirky little piece of family lore, this appearance of Fuchi in the wood grain. When it happens during a particularly significant or moving part of a Yukar, it's taken as a subtle sign that the goddess herself is present, listening with approval, and perhaps offering her silent blessing to the storyteller and the gathered listeners. Historians and archaeologists who study traditional Ainu dwellings and material culture still engage in considerable scholarly discussion regarding the precise placement and symbolic significance of the main hearth apoi and any subsidiary lamps or light sources within the Ainu sais. They consider whether their arrangement was governed by purely practical, functional considerations of optimal heat distribution, smoke management, and illumination for daily tasks, or if it also incorporated deeper symbolic, cosmological, or even specific shamanistic principles designed to create a ritually charged atmosphere, particularly for important events like ceremonies, healing rites, and the sacred recitation of the Yukar. Watching the way the single lamp now illuminates Grandmother Ritaru's focused face, leaving the rest of the sais in a suggestive, mysterious gloom that invites your imagination to fill in the details of the epic world she's describing, it certainly feels like there's a profound, intuitive artistry at play, whether consciously designed for this purpose or not. You try to follow every word of the story. Of course, but sometimes the dancing shadows on the far wall, animated by the flickering light and your own sleepy imagination, begin to put on their own, equally compelling, silent drama. Look, you might think. The epic of the slightly lopsided cooking pot and its noble quest for a more stable ember, featuring the heroic adventures of a particularly brave and resourceful dust bunny. It's a classic, playing out nightly in the Kai's Community Shadow Theater. This interplay of ancient, sacred words, the reciter's rhythmic, mesmerizing voice, And the ever-shifting dance of lamplight and shadow creates a uniquely powerful and deeply immersive storytelling experience. The figures of myth and legend, the kamui in their animal guises, the heroes on their perilous journeys, all seem to step out of the realm of mere imagination and become almost tangibly present, their forms hinted at in the warm gloom, their voices echoing in the very fabric of your Ainu home. The story lives, it breathes, it moves with the light. The flickering lamplight continues its hypnotic dance with the shadows on the bark walls of your saize, each movement seeming to animate the mythic figures conjured by Grandmother Rotaru's timeless voice. You are lost in the epic. Perhaps a tale of Okikurmi's wisdom or a Bear Kamui's journey from the divine realms to your human world. But as you listen, another layer of profound meaning begins to resonate within you, a sense that you are participating in something far larger and more ancient than just an evening's entertainment. This soothing recitation, these ancient words carried on the reciter's breath, are a living bridge, a sacred conduit connecting you directly to your ancestors, to the very soul of your Ainu identity, ensuring that the wisdom and spirit of countless generations continue to flow, vibrant and unbroken, through the heart of your community. In a world where written scrolls and dusty tomes are unknown, or at least not the primary currency of knowledge, the spoken word, the memorized epic, the carefully recited tradition, these are your libraries, your histories, your sacred texts. The Ainu, until the widespread cultural assimilation pressures of more recent centuries, relied predominantly and with incredible sophistication on oral tradition, rather than extensive written texts for the preservation and transmission of their rich history, their complex cultural knowledge, their profound religious beliefs, and their highly developed literary forms like the Yukar. This made the roles of skilled, dedicated reciters and attentive, engaged listeners absolutely crucial for the continuity and vitality of Ainu culture across the generations. Every Yukar you hear is a testament to this incredible power of human memory and the enduring strength of the spoken word. It's like an ancestral podcast. You might muse if such a whimsical future concept could even enter your thoughts. Passed down through the ages with significantly better, more resonant sound quality than your Uncle Ishikoro's occasional attempts at experimental throat singing, and absolutely no annoying mid-epic advertisements for improved fish spear designs or artisanal birch bark containers. As Grandmother Rotaru's voice rises and falls, weaving the intricate patterns of the ancient narrative, you feel an almost tangible connection to those who have sat in this very saize, or ones very much like it, listening to these same stories, warmed by these same hearth fires, for more generations than you can possibly count. You listen to these tales of courage, of folly, of divine encounters, and you realize, with a quiet thrill, that your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, whose name is perhaps itself now woven into a different kind of ancestral chant, probably heard this exact same story about why you should never, ever, under any circumstances, try to outstare a particularly grumpy owl kamui after inadvertently stepping on its favorite cloudberry patch. And she probably also thought, with a similar mixture of awe and a touch of practical concern, good advice, but that owl certainly does sound a bit overly judgmental for a nocturnal bird of prey, doesn't it? There is one particular Yukar in Grandmother Rotaru's vast repertoire that holds an especially sacred place in your family's heart. It's said that this epic, a beautiful and poignant tale about the origins of a specific healing plant was not composed by human hands, but was dream-gifted to a distant ancestor, a revered shaman woman, directly by the plant kamui itself during a profound spiritual vision. The recitation of this particular dream-gifted Yukar is always accompanied by an extra measure of reverence, a deeper hush in the saize, as it is considered a direct living link to the divine generosity of the spirit world, a quirky but cherished piece of your lineage's spiritual inheritance. Hearing it feels like touching hands with that long-ago ancestor, sharing in her sacred vision. These stories are the invisible threads that bind your Ainu identity. They teach you who you are, where you come from, what your people value. They explain your relationship with the Kamui, with the animals, the plants, the rivers, the mountains of Ainu Yukar. They contain the unwritten laws of your society, the ethics of proper conduct, the wisdom gleaned from centuries of living in this beautiful, challenging northern land. Historians and anthropologists who study the mechanisms of cultural transmission in oral societies still engage in considerable scholarly debate regarding the precise processes and remarkable accuracy of long-term oral transmission. For extremely complex and lengthy narratives like the Ainu Yukar, they explore the intricate balance between the ideal of faithful, rote memorization by trained reciters and the subtle, perhaps sometimes unconscious or even intentional, processes of adaptation, reinterpretation, communal reshaping, and localized variation that these epics might have undergone over many centuries of purely oral passage. Listening to Grandmother Ritaru, whose version of a particular Okikurmi adventure might have a slightly different emphasis or a unique descriptive flourish compared to the version you once heard from an elder in a neighboring kotan, you sense that the core, the sacred heart of the story, remains true, even if the individual storyteller breathes their own spirit into its retelling. Some of these yukar are so incredibly old, their language so archaic and filled with poetic constructions, rarely heard in everyday speech. You suspect they probably remember when the great volcanic mountains that guard your horizon were just small, aspiring, rather self-conscious hills with big dreams and a questionable early geological era fashion sense. And Grandmother Retaru, with her seemingly effortless recall, remembers every single intricate verse, every subtle intonation, every dramatic pause. Her brain, you often think, must be like a sacred, divinely organized, and incredibly well-insulated library with really good, naturally flickering atmospheric lighting. This voice bridging generations is the lifeblood of your Ainu heritage. It ensures that the lessons learned by your ancestors are not forgotten, that their encounters with the divine are remembered, that their understanding of the world continues to inform and guide your own life. It's a powerful current of continuity, flowing from the distant past, through the warm, firelit present of your sice, and on towards the unknown future, carrying with it the enduring soul, the unique wisdom, and the resilient spirit of your Ainu people, all wrapped in the soothing, timeless cadence of the Yukar. Grandmother Ritaru's voice, that ancient melodic river, continues to carry you through the vast, starlit landscapes of Ainu myth. You've heard tales of mighty animal kamui, their wisdom and their power shaping the world. You've followed the adventures of Okikurmi, the great culture hero, as he brought knowledge and order to your Ainu ancestors. And as these epics unfold in the warm, flickering lamplight of your sight, you become aware of something truly profound. Something that lies at the very heart of your people's understanding of existence, the seamless, almost effortless way these stories weave together the world of humans, the realm of the divine Kamui, and the vibrant, breathing life of the natural world itself. There are no hard, impenetrable barriers here. All is interconnected. All is alive. All is part of one great, sacred song. In the world of the Yukar, humans, gods, animals, and even seemingly inanimate objects like mountains, rivers, or household tools are not locked into separate, distinct categories of being. Ainu Yukar and the animistic worldview they reflect frequently depict a cosmos where the boundaries between the human world Ainu Mosir and the world of the Kamui Kamui Mosir are remarkably permeable. These narratives are replete with instances of direct interactions, conversations, alliances, conflicts, and even intermarriages between humans and various kamui, who often appear in animal form but possess their own societies, emotions, and spiritual power. A young Ainu woman might find herself courted by a handsome stranger who is later revealed to be the powerful fox kamui in disguise. A hunter, lost deep in the mountains, might be guided to safety by a wise old owl who speaks to him with the voice of an ancient spirit. The stories are filled with these casual, almost matter-of-fact interminglings of the sacred and the mundane. In tonight's particular Yukar, a young Ainu woman, renowned for her kindness and her beautiful singing voice, is having a very serious, heart-to-heart chat with a particularly ancient and venerable willow tree down by the riverbank about her rather complicated relationship problems with a somewhat unreliable young fisherman from the next kotan. And the willow tree, its leaves rustling with what sounds like profound empathy, is actually giving her surprisingly insightful and genuinely helpful advice. It really does make you look at your own rather unresponsive houseplants back in your modern-day dwelling with a newfound sense of critical expectation and perhaps a slight unnameable fear. This interconnectedness means that transformation is a common, almost expected occurrence. Kamui can shift their forms, appearing as animals, as humans, or even as natural phenomena like wind or fire. Humans, through great deeds, spiritual discipline, or divine favor, might gain access to the Kamui Mosir, the land of the gods, or receive supernatural gifts and powers. You listen as Grandmother Ritaru describes a hero who, after performing a great service for the Orca Kamui, the powerful god of the sea, is invited to his magnificent underwater palace for a feast that lasts for what seems like many seasons in the human world, but is merely a single evening in the timeless realm of the gods. The hero returns with treasures and wisdom, his journey a testament to the open pathways between your world and theirs. So, the hero in this particular tale just casually popped over to the land of the Cloud Kamui for what amounted to a divine afternoon tea and a brief, yet highly productive, discussion about improving local rainfall patterns for the upcoming salmon run. As one does when one is a protagonist in an Ainu Yukar, it certainly makes your own attempts at networking for better weather forecasts seem rather pedestrian and sadly lacking in divine hospitality. This worldview, so vividly portrayed in the Yukar, profoundly shapes your people's relationship with the natural environment. Every mountain has its spirit, every river its kamui. The animals are not just creatures to be hunted for sustenance, they are divine beings, often more powerful and wiser than humans, who choose to offer themselves as gifts if they are treated with the proper respect, gratitude, and ceremonial care. There's a quirky local belief in your Yucatan about certain unusual natural formations, a strangely twisted ancient pine tree on the high ridge, or a collection of moss-covered boulders by the river that, from a certain angle, look uncannily like a gathering of sleeping bears. These, it is whispered, are actually lesser kamui who, perhaps through some ancient magical mishap or a moment of divine absent-mindedness, got themselves permanently stuck mid-transformation between their spirit form and their earthly manifestation. Your people always leave small, respectful offerings of tobacco or a particularly fine berry near these petrified kamui, just in case they're still a bit grumpy about their predicament and could use a little spiritual cheering up. Historians and anthropologists who study Ainu cosmology and oral traditions still engage in thoughtful debate regarding the extent to which the Ainu people, in their daily lives, perceive the often fantastical transformations. The direct conversations with animal spirits and the inter-realm journeys described so vividly in their Yukar as literal, tangible possibilities that could occur within their own lived experience, versus understanding these extraordinary narrative elements primarily as allegorical, symbolic, or metaphorical representations of deeper spiritual truths, ecological wisdom, and the fundamental interconnectedness of all existence. Listening to Grandmother Ritaru's utterly convinced tone as she describes a talking squirrel scolding a wasteful human, it feels as though, for her and for many who listen, that line between the literal and the metaphorical is wonderfully, almost invisibly, thin. The humor in these stories often arises from these very interactions, the blurring of lines between the grand and the mundane, the divine and the everyday, the line between all-powerful nature spirit possessing eons of ancient wisdom and your unusually grumpy, but surprisingly talkative, pet bear who keeps stealing your dried fish and offering unsolicited critiques of your singing voice gets delightfully, wonderfully blurry in many of these tales. It really does make you reconsider the wisdom of ever getting into a prolonged argument with the local wildlife. That particularly bold squirrel who seems to be systematically hoarding all your carefully stored winter nuts might just be a minor forest deity with a highly developed pension plan and a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of seasonal resource allocation. This constant, seamless weaving together of worlds, the human, the natural, and the divine, is perhaps the most enchanting and soothing aspect of the Yukar. It creates a sense of belonging not just within your human community, but within a vast, living, sacred cosmos, where every being, every element has its place, its spirit, and its voice. The Yukar reminds you that you are never truly alone, that the world is filled with unseen presences, with potential allies, with ancient wisdom, all accessible through respect, attentiveness, and the enduring power of these shared lamplit stories. The ancient words of the Yukar, carried on Grandmother Ritaru's steady, rhythmic voice, continue to fill the smoky warmth of your sight. You've journeyed through realms where humans converse with gods and animal guides, where the landscape itself is alive with spirit, and where the deeds of culture heroes have shaped the very fabric of your Ainu world. And as you listen, feeling the deep resonance of these tales, another profound understanding settles within you. This is more than just story, more than just tradition. Each verse, each chanted phrase, each pause filled with the crackle of the hearth fire, is like a beat of the living heart of Ainu Mosir itself, your sacred, ancestral homeland. The Yukar is its voice, its memory, its very soul made audible. Ainu Mosir, the quiet land of humans. Your land is not merely a geographical expanse of forests, mountains, rivers, and coastlines. It is a living, breathing entity, imbued with the spirits of countless Kamui, saturated with the stories of your ancestors, and sacred in its entirety. The Ainu concept of Ainu Mosir, often translated as land of humans, or more evocatively, our peaceful land, or the world we know, encompasses far more than just the physical territory of Hokkaido, Sakhalin, and the Kuril Islands. It represents a deep, intrinsic, and spiritual connection between the Ainu people and their environment. A homeland where every feature of the landscape possesses spirit and history, and where the Yukar serve as vital oral maps and sacred charters, embedding ancestral memory, Kamui presence, and cultural meaning within specific, beloved places. The epics don't just take place in Ainu Mosir. They are Ainu Mosir, giving voice to its mountains, its rivers, its creatures, and the very air you breathe. As Grandmother Ritaru describes a perilous journey undertaken by Okakurmi through the high, snow-swept mountain passes, her words paint such a vivid picture of the jagged peaks, the swirling mists, and the echoing silence. You can almost feel the biting wind on your own skin, see the vast, indifferent sky stretching above. When she speaks of the fertile river valleys, where the salmon kamui make their life-giving runs, her voice takes on a liquid, flowing quality, and you can almost hear the rush of water over stones, smell the damp earth and the scent of spawning fish. Grandmother Ritaru is currently describing your local river, the one just a short walk from your kotan, with such passionate, intimate detail, the way the current swirls around that one particular moss-covered boulder, the specific glint of sunlight on the water at midday, the unique song of the dipper bird that nests in its banks. You're half expecting the river itself to politely divert its course, flow gently right into the Seiss, and offer her a refreshing cup of its own cool water and its personal, heartfelt thanks for the exceptionally accurate and highly flattering public relations. Yes, I am indeed particularly sparkling and full of lively fish this season. You can almost hear it gurgle. Thank you so very much for noticing and for sharing my many virtues with this esteemed assembly. There is a deeply held belief, a quirky but powerful piece of ancestral wisdom, that certain very ancient and potent Yukar, if recited with the correct reverence and intention at specific sacred locations within Ainu Mosir, perhaps at the foot of a particularly imposing mountain kamui, beside a venerable ancient tree believed to be a gathering place for forest spirits, or on a lonely headland overlooking the vast, powerful sea, can have a direct, almost magical, influence on the local environment or the resident kamui of that place. It's said that a flawlessly performed epic of the weather kamui might calm a raging blizzard, or that a heartfelt recitation of a salmon kamui yukar at the river mouth can ensure an abundant run of fish. This isn't about commanding the spirits, but about respectfully reminding them of the ancient, reciprocal bonds, the sacred agreements, that link your Ainu people to the land and its divine guardians. Historians and cultural anthropologists still engage in considerable scholarly discussion regarding the precise nature and perceived boundaries of Ainu Mosir in pre-modern Ainu understanding. They explore the extent to which it represented a clearly defined, bounded territorial claim in a political or proto-national sense, versus being a more fluid, spiritually and culturally defined homeland encompassing traditional hunting, Wasai fishing, gathering, and ceremonial grounds, whose true boundaries were understood and maintained primarily through generations of oral tradition, kinship networks, and intimate, place-based ecological knowledge rather than through formal cartography or fixed political borders. Listening to the Yukar, which seems to map every significant rock, tree, and river bend with such loving, story-filled detail, you feel that Ainu Mosir is written not on perishable bark or hide, but on the very landscape itself, and in the collective heart of your people. The rhythm of the Yukar, that steady white hypnotic beat sometimes underscored by the tap of Grandmother Ritaru's Little Thunder Repnai, feels like the very pulse of the land. The stories themselves are its lifeblood, carrying the essential nutrients of wisdom, identity, spirituality, and belonging to every member of your community. The shared experience of listening, of being enveloped in these ancient words within the warm heart of the sighs, is like feeling that communal heartbeat, strong and steady and reassuring. You realize with a sense of profound clarity that this Yukar isn't just a story being told about Ainu Mosir. It's more like a very long, incredibly poetic, and occasionally quite terrifyingly dramatic tourism brochure being narrated by the ancient, collective spirit of the land itself. Come, it seems to whisper, and see my wonders, understand my spirits, respect my laws, and remember you are a part of me. A deep emotional resonance fills you as you listen, a feeling of profound belonging, an unshakable love for this sometimes harsh but always beautiful northern land, a deep-seated respect for the myriad kamui who animate it, and a quiet, resilient pride in the Ainu way of life that has flourished here for so long. If Ainu Mosir ever decided it needed an official theme song, it would undoubtedly be a Yukar, probably one of the really, really long ones, with lots of those dramatic, heart-stopping pauses Grandmother Ritaru does so well, and at least 17 interconnected verses about the deep, philosophical implications of moss distribution on north-facing rocks. And it would be an absolute chart-topper across all the Khotan, obviously. Each verse, each image, each ancient word choice resonates within you, affirming your place within this sacred homeland and its sacred presence within you. This is the true heartbeat of Ainu Mosir, a timeless spiritual pulse, celebrated and kept alive in every soothing, reverent, lamplit recitation of the epic Yukar. The voice of Grandmother Ritaru, that ancient, soothing river of sound, has carried you through starlit forests, across spirit-haunted mountains, and into the very heart of Ainu Mosir, your beloved homeland. You've walked with gods and animal guys, learned at the feet of Okikurmaya, your great culture hero, and felt the very pulse of the land resonating in each chanted verse. But even the grandest epics, those that seem to span eternities, must eventually draw to their gentle, satisfying close. As the narrative arc of tonight's Yukar begins its descent, as the final adventures are recounted and the ultimate lessons subtly imparted, A different kind of anticipation begins to fill the warm, smoky air of your sighs the quiet, peaceful expectation of the story's end, and the gentle slumber that will soon follow. Grandmother Ritaru's voice, though perhaps a little softer now, a little more imbued with the weariness of a long journey through mythic time, remains clear and resonant. She delivers the final lines of the epic with the same meticulous care and profound respect she accorded its opening verses. Perhaps the hero has returned, triumphant and wise to their people. Perhaps the mischievous Kamui has learned its lesson, or bestowed a final, unexpected gift. Ainu Yukar often have distinct concluding formulas or closing phrases that signal the formal end of the epic narrative. These might include a summary of the story's main teaching or moral, a blessing for the listeners or the household, a respectful farewell to the Kamui characters who populated the tale, or a formal statement releasing the spirits and characters from the storytelling space, allowing them to return to their own realms. The epic concludes, "The primary hero has, after many trials and tribulations, successfully vanquished the particularly odious swamp weasels of despair, restored balance to the northern marshes, and everyone mostly, and with a few notable exceptions who probably deserve their slightly less happy endings lives, reasonably contentedly ever after. Or at least until the next exciting Yukar installment, detailing further weasel-related shenanigans." You feel a sense of profound, almost cathartic closure. And also, if you're being perfectly honest, a rather desperate, all-encompassing need to stretch your legs without disrupting the sacred ambiance. As her last word hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of wood smoke and the faint, lingering aroma of dried herbs from the rafters, a deep, profound silence settles upon the sais. It's a silence different from the expectant hush that preceded the story. This is a silence filled with echoes, with images, with the lingering presence of the characters and worlds you've just inhabited. It's a silence so complete, so utterly respectful. You're fairly certain you can hear the nearly imperceptible sizzle of the fish oil in the lamp as it contemplates its plans for tomorrow morning's illumination. It's a very deep, very reverent. Nobody dare break the magic, or grandmother Ridru will bestow upon you the look of mild but eternally disappointed ancestors kind of silence. Then, a quirky, almost inaudible tradition unfolds. A soft, collective hum, a barely perceptible sigh of contentment and gratitude, ripples through the listeners. It's not a spoken word, but a shared exhalation, a quiet, communal nyawe. Thank you offered to the storyteller for her gift, to the spirits of the Yukar for their presence, and to the Creator for the wisdom and beauty of these ancient tales. It's a gentle release, a soft punctuation mark at the end of a long, shared journey. A feeling of profound peace and emotional completion settles over you. The adventures, the lessons, the beauty of the Yukar are now tucked safely away in your heart, ready to inform your dreams and perhaps even your waking thoughts tomorrow. The children, some of whom may have finally succumbed to sleep in the later, more meandering verses, are now deeply adrift in their own innocent dream worlds. Their faces soft and untroubled in the dim light. The adults, too, feel a gentle weariness. The satisfying exhaustion that comes from an evening well spent in good company and deep, imaginative engagement. You're pretty sure your own dreams tonight will feature at least one or two talking bears offering surprisingly astute financial advice regarding the optimal bartering strategy for surplus salmon. And quite possibly Okakurumi attempting to patiently teach you how to properly whittle a spiritually resonant and aerodynamically sound fishhook. Standard post-Yukar subconscious processing. Really? Historians and ethnographers who study the performance context of Ainu Yukar still engage in considerable scholarly discussion regarding the original intended duration and typical setting of the longest and most complex of these oral epics. They debate whether these incredibly lengthy narratives, some of which could indeed take many hours or even span successive nights to recite in their entirety, were always performed as complete, unbroken cycles, or if it was perhaps more common for shorter, self-contained episodes or significant excerpts to be recited in more everyday, informal settings, with the full, unabridged epic performance being reserved for specific grand ceremonial occasions, or particularly long winter nights when time was abundant. Listening to Grandmother Rataru, who seems to possess an inexhaustible wellspring of these tales, you feel you've experienced something truly whole and sacred tonight, a complete journey. The soothing, hypnotic rhythms of the Yukar, the wisdom woven into its narrative, the shared experience of listening together in the warm security of your ancestral home. All these elements have combined to create a perfect atmosphere for gentle slumber. The heartbeat of Ainu Mosir, which pulsed so strongly through the verses, now seems to cradle you, lulling you towards rest. The epic has ended, but its spirit remains. A quiet strength, a deep peace, a readiness for whatever the new dawn may bring. The stories will sleep with you and awaken with you, a timeless internal treasure. The last embers in the central hearth now glow with a soft, deep orange, their warmth a gentle comfort in the cool of the northern night. The fish oil lamp, its fuel nearly spent, casts long, sleepy shadows that barely stir on the bark walls of your sais. Grandmother Rataru, her voice now silent, her duty as storyteller for this evening fulfilled, perhaps sips a little cool water, her eyes holding a serene, distant look, as if still partly in the world of the Yukar she so beautifully brought to life. The profound quiet that has settled over your Ainu home is not an empty silence, but one filled with the lingering magic of ancient words, with the wisdom of generations, and with the deep, unspoken bonds of family and community. Allow the echoes of that epic tale, the rhythm of that soothing recitation, to gently fade now, like the last notes of a beautiful, ancient song drifting away on the night wind. The vivid images of gods and animal guise, of heroic journeys through enchanted landscapes, of Ainu Mosir in all its wild, sacred beauty. Let them soften, blur, and dissolve into the peaceful darkness that now surrounds you. The concerns of that Ainu family, their joys, their challenges, their deep spiritual connections, can recede as you drift back towards your own time, your own space. You are returning, slowly and gently, to the quiet comfort of your own bed, leaving behind the smoky warmth of the saisei and the flickering lamplight. The scent of pine and wood smoke gives way to the familiar, soothing aroma of your own peaceful sanctuary. The journey into the heart of Ainu tradition is drawing to a close. You have listened, you have imagined, you have felt the gentle, enduring rhythms of a life lived in deep harmony with nature and spirit. Now, it is time for your own spirit to find its rest, your own mind to embrace the quietude of sleep. May the peace and serenity of that ancient lamplit storytelling circle accompany you into your dreams, and may your slumber be as deep and as restorative as that of the Ainu child, safe and warm by the hearth, lulled to sleep by the timeless heartbeat of the Yukar.